can we steel man the case for some level of transparency and openness, maybe open sourcing? So the case could be that because GPT-4 is not close to AGI, if that's the case, that this does allow open sourcing, being open about the architecture, being transparent about maybe research and investigation of how the thing works, of all the different aspects of it, of its behavior, of its structure, of its training processes, of the data it was trained on, everything like that. That allows us to gain a lot of insights about alignment, about the alignment problem, to do really good AI safety research while the system is not too powerful. Can you make that case that it could be open sourced?
I do not believe in the practice of steel manning. There is something to be said for trying to pass the ideological Turing test, where you describe your opponent's position, the disagreeing person's position, well enough that somebody cannot tell the difference between your description and their description. But steel manning, no.
Okay, well, this is where you and I disagree here. That's interesting. Why don't you believe in steel manning?
I do not want. Okay, so for one thing, if somebody's trying to understand me, I do not want them steel manning my position. Mm-hmm. I want them to describe to try to describe my position the way I would describe it, not what they think is an improvement.
Well, I think that is what steel manning is the most charitable interpretation.
I don't want to be interpreted charitably. I want them to understand what I am actually saying. If they go off into the land of charitable interpretations, they're off in their land of the stuff they're imagining and not trying to understand my own viewpoint anymore.
Well, I'll put it differently then, just to push on this point. I would say it is restating what I think you understand under the empathetic assumption that Eliezer is brilliant and have honestly and rigorously thought about the point he has made, right?
So if there's two possible interpretations of what I'm saying, mm-hmm. and one interpretation is really stupid and whack and doesn't sound like me and doesn't fit with the rest of what I've been saying, and one interpretation, sounds like something a reasonable person who believes the rest of what I believe would also say, mm-hmm. go with the second interpretation.
That's steel manning.
That's a good guess. If on the other hand, there's something that sounds completely whack and something that sounds like a little less completely whack, but you don't see why I would believe in it, doesn't fit with the other stuff I say, but that sounds like less whack and you can sort of see, you could maybe argue it, then you probably have not understood it.
See, okay, this is fun because I'm going to linger on this. You wrote a brilliant blog post, AGI ruined a list of lethalities, right? And it was a bunch of different points. And I would say that some of the points are bigger and more powerful than others. If you were to sort them, you probably could, you personally. And to me, steel manning means going through the different arguments and finding the ones that are really the most powerful. If people like TLDR, what should you be most concerned about, and bringing that up in a strong, compelling, eloquent way. These are the points that Eliezer would make to make the case, in this case, that AI is going to kill all of us. But that's what steel manning is presenting it in a really nice way, the summary of my best understanding of your perspective. Because to me, there's a sea of possible presentations of your perspective. And steel manning is doing your best to do the best one in that sea of different perspectives.
Do you believe it?
Do I believe in what?
These things that you would be presenting as the strongest version of my perspective. Mm-hmm. Do you believe what you would be presenting? Do you think it's true?
I'm a big proponent of empathy. When I see the perspective of a person, there is a part of me that believes it if I understand it. I mean, especially in political discourse, in geopolitics, I've been hearing a lot of different perspectives on the world. And I hold my own opinions, but I also speak to a lot of people that have a very different life experience and a very different set of beliefs. And I think there has to be epistemic humility in stating what is true. So when I empathize with another person's perspective, there is a sense in which I believe it is true. I think probabilistically, I would say, in the way you think about
Do you
it.
bet money on it? Do you bet money on their beliefs when you believe them?
Are we allowed to do probability?
Sure, you can state a probability that.
Yes, there's a probability. There's a
Hmm.
there's a probability, and I think empathy is allocating a non-zero probability to a belief in some sense for time.
If you've got someone on your show who believes in the Abrahamic deity, classical style, somebody on the show who's a young Earth creationist, do you say I put a probability on it, then that's my empathy?
When you reduce beliefs into probabilities, it starts to get, we can even just go to flat Earth. Is the Earth flat?
I think it's a little more difficult nowadays to find people who believe that unironically. But
unfortunately, I think, it's hard to know unironic from ironic. But I think there's quite a lot of people that believe that. Yeah, there's a space of argument where you're operating rationally in the space of ideas. But then there's also a kind of discourse where you're operating in the space of subjective experiences and life experiences. Like, I think what it means to be human is more than just searching for truth. It's just operating of what is true and what is not true. I think there has to be a deep humility that we humans are very limited in our ability to understand what is true.
So what probability do you assign to the young Earth creationists' beliefs then?
I think I have to give non-zero.
Out of your humility. Yeah, but like 3?
I think it would be irresponsible for me to give a number because the listener, the way the human mind works, we're not good at hearing the probabilities, right? You hear 3. What is 3 exactly, right? What they're going to like. Well, there's only 3 probabilities. I feel like 0, 50%, and 100% in the human mind, or something like this, right?
Well, 0, 40%, and 100% is a bit closer to it, based on what happens to ChatGPT after you RLHF it to speak humanese.
It's brilliant. Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't know those negative side effects of RLHF. That's fascinating. But just to return to the OpenAI close there.
Also, like, quick disclaimer. I'm doing all of this from memory. I'm not pulling out my phone to look it up. It is entirely possible that the things I'm saying are wrong.
So thank you for that disclaimer. So, and thank you for being willing to be wrong. That's beautiful to hear. I think being willing to be wrong is a sign of a person who's done a lot of thinking about this world and has been humbled by the mystery and the complexity of this world. And I think a lot of us are resistant to admitting we're wrong because it hurts. It hurts personally. It hurts, especially when you're a public human. It hurts publicly because people point out every time you're wrong. Like, look, you changed your mind. You're a hypocrite. You're an idiot. Whatever they want to say.
Oh, I block those people, and then I never hear from them again on Twitter.
Well, the point is to not let that pressure, public pressure, affect your mind, and be willing to be in the privacy of your mind to contemplate the possibility that you're wrong, and the possibility that you're wrong about the most fundamental things you believe, like people who believe in a particular God, people who believe that their nation is the greatest nation on earth, but like all those kinds of beliefs that are core to who you are when you came up. To raise that point to yourself in the privacy of your mind and say, maybe I'm wrong about this. That's a really powerful thing to do. And especially when you're somebody who's thinking about topics that can, about systems that can destroy human civilization or maybe help it flourish. So thank you. Thank you for being willing to be wrong.